Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Me and a friend just got done watching The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi. And, going online after watching it, and I'm seeing people are split in between. And I enjoyed it. Sure, it's not perfect, but, yeah, there we go. There's my opinion. I enjoyed the film. I liked what happened in it, and I think a lot of people are overreacting to some of the things that happen in it. And there's almost no way to talk about what happened in the movie without jumping into spoilers. So, I'm gonna just say this right now: spoiler warnings for The Last Jedi. So what happened in the movie? So Luke Luke is dead. He pulled a big old fuck you to Kylo Ren in the last scene where him and Kylo are going out. He's going out there on the snow and or salt or whatever you call it. But he's coming out of the base. He's walking up towards the walkers and Kylo Ren's ship, and everyone's just like, fuck him, and they're all shooting at him, and he's still there, and it turns out in the end it was a illusion, and that Luke Skywalker was still on Octu, I believe is the name of the planet that he was on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he used a force projection, which was actually in Star Wars Rebels, that people actually paid attention to the shows. I mean, these people are Star Wars fans, so you would think that they would be watching Star Wars Rebels a little bit too, but it seems like they haven't. And now there's a lot of people that are pissed off with this scene, and there's people that aren't pissed off with the scene. I personally found it to be fucking badass. Because of the fact that and people are like, I want to see Luke in his prime. I want to see Luke do flips and shit. And I'm like thinking to myself, dudes, do you know how old Mark Hamill is? Do you guys realize how old he is? He can't do that shit. Even if he got assisted by ropes, or they just fucking CGI the shit or something. I mean, they could have CGI'd the shit, but it would have looked ridiculous. And you and I both know this. You, the fans who are pissed off with this, know you would have been more pissed off if they did it and it looked fake. Trust me. You've watched the prequels, I'm 100% sure, and everyone hated the prequels. Unanimously hated the prequels, and the prequels is the one that had all the flipping and shit, all the crazy lightsaber spins and shit, and everyone hated those films for that, so they went for something a little bit simple, and now you're pissed off because of how simple it looks. And I'm like thinking to myself, dudes, there's this one scene in The Last Jedi that I agree with, and it's not just a message to Rey from Kylo Ren, but it's also a message to the fans. There's two messages directly to the fans in this film, and this one is probably one of them, that is secretly a message to all the fans. Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. And that was a message from Kylo Ren to Rey, and honestly I think it's a message to the fans as well, is to let it go. The canon is the original canon, which is now Legends, is just that Legends. And they acknowledge this in the movie. If you actually pay attention to what Luke says, he says, and then I became a legend. And that's kind of a nice little nod to all the books, whether people caught on to that or not, that, look, a lot of people started making all these rumors about me and all these things that I could do, and I'm just a normal human being in the end. And that's the truth. The Jedi and Sith are just, in the end, they're just flawed human beings, or alien creatures and whatnot. They all have human aspects of being flawed and shit, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that message. I'm 100% fine. I don't see what the problem is. And then there's the other message to the from Luke to Rey, and it could also be a secret message to the fans that this isn't going to go the way you think. Everyone's thinking, oh god, the Star Wars movies are ruined now, and then they miss the message. It's not going to go the way you think it is. And it was also a message to all these idiots out there creating fan theories of Snoke, who Snoke is, who Rey is, whose Rey parents are, who Rey is she the chosen one, is she the child of the Force, or some bullshit like that. I stopped looking up the fan theories and stuff, because in the end it's just people overhyping themselves to an extraordinary level, and that's what happened with this film. Is everyone else who hated the film overhyped themselves, and then they got disappointed. And I think people need to start changing their tactics. Instead of overhyping themselves, they should underhype themselves instead, because then when the movie comes out, it becomes the best thing ever. And a lot of these people read the expanded universe and stuff, and think that the expanded universe should have stayed as canon. And honestly, I don't think so. I've read some of the books myself. I didn't get a chance to read all of them, but I've read like the ones that most people tend to talk about when it comes to the Star Wars canon, like the Yuuzhan Vong and the clone Palpatine, Luke occasionally going evil just to kill clone Sidious or whatever, stuff like that. I mean, there's a few books that I've read. I didn't read all of them again because by the time I actually got interested in reading the expanded universe, there was just too many books and I didn't know where to begin, and no one else was gonna help me figure out where to begin on that. And in my eyes, I never truly saw the books as canon. I separated them from the movies. To me, the movies were the canon. The movies were the canon in my eyes, and that might not be the most popular opinion out there, because a lot of people love their precious book canon. And to me, that was its own separate canon, separate from the movies themselves. And I'm like thinking to myself, what happens in the movies is what's canon, what we know for a fact happens. Because you can see it, you can hear it, and with books you can only read it and try to visualize it. And I sometimes it's hard for you to do that, especially if the book ends up actually not being that great. And some of the expanded universe books that I have read weren't as good as what people say they are. And again, that's probably another unpopular opinion. But, yeah, to me, I just didn't enjoy it as much, because the movies came out first before the books did, I believe. There were no Star Wars books before A New Hope came out, but by the time A New Hope came out, I'm sure the books started emerging, and then they skyrocketed after the Return of the Jedi. I almost said The Last Jedi for some reason, but the Return of the Jedi, it was insane how many books pop up in 30 years between the Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens. There's 30 years of books, 30 years of possible TV shows, comic books, you name it, video games. Though most of the video games came in like 2001, 1992, as early as 1980s perhaps. There might have been some in the 1980s. But, and during that entire time before Disney took over, all that shit was canon. Everything that happened in those books were considered canon by fans. And to me, I'm like, no. I never considered it I just considered it its own self-contained universe that's set in the Star Wars universe, and everything that happens in those books, in those TV shows and video games were in their own separate pocket universe, like some sort of, like, I guess you could say, parallel universe where this stuff happens and stuff. And and to me, it didn't bother me that I was not viewing it as like main Star Wars canon. But then, of course, Disney took over and removed all that from canon, and then they're slowly reintroducing some of the concepts from the older books into the canon, and now people are getting all pissy because it's not exactly the same as it was in the books. With The Force Awakens, they introduced a pilot, which is now known as Poe Dameron, but there was a similar pilot in the expanded universe, from what I can gather from research, because like I said, I never actually read all the books. I've read some of them, but not all of them. I didn't have the time or the money to do that. Whenever I could, I would read them. And like I said, what I read was very limited compared to what everyone else seems to have read, and now everyone who has read those books are now pissed off with The Last Jedi for some reason, even though if they actually go back and read the books, some of the shit that these people do in the movie actually happened. And there's a few elephants in the room, and a lot of people seem to be divided on everything related to Leia in the movie. In the movie, Leia gets ejected out into space by Kylo Ren's henchman, but not Kylo Ren himself, thankfully. And then she reaches out with the Force and pulls her back into the spaceship, which everyone's like, oh, that's so overpowered. And I'm like thinking to myself, do you guys realize there's no gravity in space? All she really has to do is lightly pull at the ship, pull herself towards the ship, and then the gravity will do the rest for her. I mean, all she had to do was just reach out, force pull herself towards the ship, and then the gravity would just pull her towards the ship. And from what it seems like, the ships have their own gravity as well, so it would make it easier for her, even easier for her to get to this ship. Because during that early scenes and stuff, there was this whole thing about these bombers. These bomber ships. They're really big things, and they have like gajillion bombs on them or something. And there's one left, and they drop the bombs and they drop straight down. There seems to be no gravity. That's because the big giant ship has its own, is big enough to have its own gravitational pull. And if you actually read up on the Death Star and Death Star 2.0, they also had their own gravitational pull to it as well. And you could actually see this in Return of the Jedi. So there is gravity on these giant ships. That the bigger they are, the bigger the gravity is, it seems. Because the gravity on Death Star 2.0 was big enough to pull a fucking the big flagship of the Empire down to blow a hole in the Death Star or whatever, which was probably the best fucking thing I've ever seen. But then this movie has a scene in it that I think tops it. I mean, and I hate to say that. There's some things in this movie that are done better than previous movies, and then there are some things that aren't done as good as the other movies, and I'm sure. And like I'm saying, I'm not saying that it's perfect and it's flawless. I'm just saying that it's better than what people are saying it is. And a lot of these people that are hating on the film seem to be hating on it because it ruins their canon, everything that they thought was canon. But they need to realize it's not canon anymore, it's legends. And these new books that are coming out are the new canon. And there's going to be more new books that come out that will flesh out this new Star Wars universe that Disney is setting up. Everything that happened in the prequels and the original trilogy happened, like in the movies. but the books were, there's too many books. There's too much to work off of, and if they were to try and pull that off, if they were to try to actually, do everything in the book, you would have still been pissed off. Don't 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 kid yourself if you think you would have enjoyed them trying to bring your canon bring your books into film form. Don't kid yourself with that, because you would have been pissed off. They would have failed miserably, and you would have been pissed off again, like you are now, like you are in the comment sections of many different videos of, and like you are with petitioning Disney like immature fucks to remove The Last Jedi from canon. And that's why I hate some Star Wars fans. There are some Star Wars fans out there that love The Last Jedi, and I'm sure of it. And for those who do love it, congratulations. You're smart enough to know that it's not bad, and I don't see it. I don't see any of these arguments that they're saying. I don't see it. I just don't. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't perceive it. And a lot of these arguments seem to be stemming from the fact that the books were no longer canon, and everyone thought that Luke was going to come out being all badass and shit. But I've been going off on a tangent. Let's go back to the one scene that I was about to talk about. So this new character Holden, or what's her name? I think it's Holden. Holdor. I'm just kidding. She decides to turn the ship around. All the lifeboats have escaped and are trying to head towards Crate, and some of them are getting shot down by the minute. And so she has this last minute decision to turn the ship around and hyperdrive into the flagship of the First Order, splitting it in two. And I'm like, holy shit! The entire thing was just like, go. And I'll probably be watching it a second time, and this is just my first viewing opinions on it. I had no problems with it. I had no major problems with it. I had a few minor problems with it, but nothing on the scale of what everyone else seems to be having with it. And everyone thinks Luke's portrayal of Luke, their portrayal of Luke is all wrong and terrible and stuff. And I think Disney allowed Mark Hamill to say that he didn't like his portrayal of Luke on purpose to try to tone down the hype for Luke to get everyone to be like not so excited, but for some reason it didn't help any, and people were overexcited to see Luke return, and then only for Luke to be this broken man and this reluctant hero again, and then he has no like major like lightsaber duel other than this illusionary one with Kylo Ren. And I thought that was pretty awesome and brilliant, because Luke decided he's not gonna give Kylo the satisfaction of killing him, and instead dueling with a mirage essentially, and that was pretty fucking funny, because Luke went out with two of his middle fingers pointed directly at Kylo Ren, and he's just like, fuck you, you piece of shit. Oh man, I bet Kylo Ren's gonna be pissed in the third film that he didn't get a chance to kill Luke. And another big major spoiler is the whole scene where Snoke and Rey and Kylo Ren in this big giant throne room, and Snoke, and then there's this big reveal in it where Kylo's like, your parents are pieces of shit, basically, and everyone thinks that what he's saying is true, because Kylo Ren says, you know that they are pieces of shit for leaving you behind. And that's all they did, is left her behind, and she doesn't know why, but Kylo Ren's like, oh, it's because they traded you off for drugs and shit, or something like that. I don't remember. But what if he's lying? And no one seems to be thinking to themselves, what if Kylo Ren is lying to Rey to get her to be pissed off so she could use the dark side of the Force? And everyone's like, oh, that was the worst reveal I've ever seen. And I'm like thinking to myself, guys, and girls, settle the fuck down. The Kylo Ren could be lying. He could be lying. Like Sith usually do. They lie, they manipulate, and they try to turn people to the dark side. And what do you think Kylo Ren's trying to do right then and there is try to turn Rey to the dark side, the same way Rey was trying to turn Kylo Ren to the light side. Which is a very interesting little dynamic that's going on. Both sides are trying to pull the other to their side instead of push each other away and destroy the other. They're trying to bring them together, which is interesting to think about. And then there's this scene where Rey is on her knees and Kylo Ren's ready to ignite his crossguard saber, but he's also moving Rey's lightsaber, which is Luke's lightsaber, which was Anakin's lightsaber, towards Snoke, and Snoke is like, strike through, fulfill your destiny. Strike your true enemy down. He chose his words carefully. He chose his words very carefully because he knew he wasn't gonna. He says he's never been betrayed before, and he knows Kylo Ren's true intentions, and he's like, strike through, or some shit like that, and then Kylo Ren ignites the blue lightsaber, cutting him in half. And everyone's favorite Snoke theory is now gone. No. Man, so many people got butthurt, and I'm like thinking to myself, that was fucking awesome. I did not see that coming from, like, I saw it coming, but I was expecting it to be in the third film, granted, but it happens in the second film instead, and there's two ways that scene could have gone. Option A, Snoke used an illusion. Option B, Snoke was actively encouraging Kylo to strike him down with all his hatred and take his place as the master of the First Order. I'm just saying, there's a third way that this could go. Or Snoke was literally that arrogant to not assume that Kylo Ren would try to strike him down. There's three ways that scene could go, and I'm certain that it's going to be answered in the third film. Hopefully, it's either A, it was an illusion, or B, Snoke wanted Kylo to kill him, or three, Snoke was just that arrogant and that blinded by his arrogance to the point where he actually couldn't see what Kylo Ren was really doing. I mean, he could have just been boasting his powers to extraordinary levels, and it just turns out that Snoke is just simply half the man everyone thought he was, pun intended. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm very sorry. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue I could come up with was, I mean, and I think everyone agrees with the cantina scene in this one, which was that big giant casino. I was half expecting them to play Pazak. I was hoping to see Pazak to be reintroduced into the canon, and maybe if it's probably one of those blink and you'll miss it moments, and if I go back to watch it again, I'll pause at that scene to see if they're playing Pazak in one of the tables. If no one knows what Pazak is, then you haven't played Knights of the Old Republic 1 or 2. And I'm sorry I'm trailing on and on and on and on, but I just want to cover everything that I want to talk about. And one of the biggest things that happened that I think is interesting is this cave scene where Rey is jumping into this dark cavern, and there's this big giant crystal wall thingy, and she looks into it, and then she sees like several versions of herself or something like that that are on a delay or something. And whenever she starts snapping her fingers, it just trails down the illusion or whatever. And then she's asking, "Show me my parents," and all of a sudden you see this shadow walking towards her, and I was like, and then it shows herself, and I'm like, she's a child of the Force. She has no parents, and she she has maybe a mother, maybe a father, and maybe they died, killed by Kylo Ren or something, and maybe that's what's going to be revealed in the third film instead. And the truth is that they weren't pieces of shit. They were trying to get Rey away from Snoke and away from Kylo Ren, who was still about as young as her or something. I don't know, but we'll see on that one. Well, anyways, I think I have covered all the things that I wanted to talk about. I'm sure I've missed a few things that people are bitching about, but to me, it's like, stop. Just stop. You overhyped yourselves, and you're letting the movie get to you when Rian Johnson, the director, I think, let me check. I believe it's Rian Johnson. Yeah, Rian Johnson. If you've watched Rian Johnson's movies, you would know that Rian Johnson is the master at fucking with your mind, basically. And it's just him toying with you the entire time. He is messing with your mind, and he's asking you guys the question, which I guess is one of the things that a lot of people don't like. They want to be the ones asking the questions, and the fans are the ones who want the answers, and they're the ones asking the questions. They don't like to be asked questions themselves. And here's Rian Johnson, and he's asking you guys a bunch of questions as to, is everything truly the way it seems? I think I've gone on long enough, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish everyone else could see what I see when I watch this film. And for those of you that enjoyed it, congratulations, you're on board with me on this one, I believe, for the most part. And for those of you who didn't enjoy it, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you didn't enjoy the film. I wish you could see what I could see and what everyone else who does enjoy the film see when they watch the film. So, like, subscribe, comment in the comment sections below. Tell me your Star Wars experience, whether positive or negative. We'll see you next time.